For 10 years, the Beanpot has felt like a ghost haunting Chestnut Hill. But last night at the Garden, the haunting ended with a statement win over BU. If you're an Eagles fan, it's a historic 21st title. But if you're a Bruins fan, it was a personal preview of your 2028, 2029, 2030 Boston Bruins because the black and gold fingerprints were all over this victory.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I'm your host, Ian McLaren. I'm a lifelong Boston Bruins fan, and I've been covering this team and the NHL for various outlets for nearly 20 years. Today is Tuesday, February 10th, and on this episode, we are going to break down last night's win by BC at the Beanpot over BU. We'll discuss how the win took place, the significance of it, and most importantly, the Boston Bruins prospects that were instrumental in that victory and kind of how they're projecting to develop and potentially make an impact at the NHL level sooner than later. We'll also take a quick look at the Olympics with the men's hockey tournament getting set to begin here in just a couple days. But the big story last night, of course, was BC taking the Beanpot over BU in pretty convincing fashion, a lopsided win, and the man of the hour, a Boston Bruins 2021 7th round pick, senior captain Andre Gasseau. This is a guy who has lived through the heartbreak of this tournament for 4 years. BC hadn't won in like a decade, and he battled through and missed the first half of this season with an injury, but he returned in full force. Gasseau is a force in the front of the net, scoring 2 goals on the power play to lead the Eagles, and Coach Greg Brown said Gasseau is their everything player. That is music to Don Sweeney's ears. He's first over the boards for the PK, first out there on the power play, and also a face-off specialist. He's 22 years old, full 4 years of college, 6'4" specimen who plays a pro-style game, and Bruins fans should expect to see him in Providence at the end of this season with a shot at making the Bruins at some point in his career. Like, this guy has all the tools. As the 213th overall pick at the 2021 NHL entry draft, he has only played in 13 games this season, limited due to injury, but he's got 6 goals, 9 assists for 15 points, has been a steady presence for BC all throughout his college career, and 22 years old, he's going to have 4 years of college under his belt, and hoping to end it on an even better note than winning the Beanpot, as the Eagles have put themselves in position now to make the college playoffs. The MVP, though, was James Hagens, the 7th overall pick at the 2025 NHL entry draft. He's leading the team with 31 points, added 2 more assists in the Beanpot win last night. And look, last year Hagens was the flashy draft pick. He was at one point projected to go top 5, top 3. Even some people had him as the first overall pick at last year's NHL entry draft. He perhaps, in some people's eyes, took a step back last season by not stepping up in his freshman year. He kind of deferred to some of the guys who were more established there. This season, he has definitely stepped up, and Coach Brown is putting him on the ice not just to try to build leads, but to protect leads. He's rounding out his defensive game, making him a much more dangerous 3-zone center. Again, music to Don Sweeney's ears. These are the kinds of guys that the Boston Bruins covet and want to develop into players at the NHL level. Hagens and Gasseau played on the top line last night, showing a chemistry that Bruins fans hope translates to the NHL level. James Hagens, of course, heading into the draft, was billed as a fluid skater, light on his edges, leverages full range, wingspan handling, high activity rate crossovers, a motor to create constant advantages. He layers pucks through tricky seams, hooks and slips feeds around pressure, and improvises on the fly with lightning quick processing, punching away from threats and funneling play to the inside. If that doesn't scream a center for a guy like David Pastrnak, I don't know what is. This guy can find people all over the ice, and I just cannot wait to see him in black and gold feeding Morgan Geekie, David Pastrnak sooner than later. I should add, Gasseau, his scouting report via Elite Prospects reads he's a shooter with some flash and instincts, consistently finds space between the face-off dots, ready for a one-timer or catch and release wrister. Handling skills complement Gasseau's shooting as he turns tricky passes into powerful wristers. He catches passes in motion, beats players in motion, and flashes the one-on-one skill to watch through a defender on occasion. This guy, for a 7th-round pick, has all the skills that you want to see from a future Bruins scorer. So we've talked about the captain, his final bow at the Beanpot, ending it on a winning note. You have the MVP, James Hagens, stepping up offensively and leading the way as the tournament's most valuable player. We got to talk about the unicorn, though. Dean Letourneau. He was a 2024 first-round pick, 25th overall. If Gasseau provides the grit, then Letourneau provides the highlight reel. He iced this game with a silky deke in tight for his team-leading 16th goal of the season. This guy is 6'7" and is a true unicorn prospect. Seeing a guy like that with big hands, soft hands, exactly why the Bruins spent a first-round pick on him. He's now trailing only Hagens for the team lead in points. And look, he was part of the reason why the Bruins wanted to get back into the first round in 2024. They made that trade with the Ottawa Senators to send Linus Ullmark over for Mark Kastelik. They absorbed 75% of Joonas Korpisalo's contract, which all of a sudden isn't looking too bad. And they wanted to get into the first round to select Dean Letourneau, a gigantic player, 6'7", but it doesn't feel like he's trapped in his own body, according to the scouting report. He moves quite freely, especially because he uses crossover techniques to avoid the long, lower strides. And there's good upper body, lower body separation, some agility there. A lot of his offense consists of downhill attacks, where he surveys pressure, drives the net with his range and size, or leverages the attention he receives to find open teammates. Last season was a bit of a disaster for Letourneau. Freshman season at Boston College, 36 games played, 3 total assists. This season, though, 26 games played, he's got 16 goals, 12 assists for 28 total points, and again, is only second to James Hagens in scoring on this team. Hagens leading the way with 31 points, Letourneau now with 28 points. Then you have Gasseau with 15 points in 13 games. We'll touch on some of the other guys here later on. But this guy is turning into a real find for Don Sweeney and co. If he can continue his development, you look at what Tage Thompson is doing with the Buffalo Sabres as a big-bodied forward. You can kind of get a glimpse of what the Bruins were envisioning here from Dean Letourneau. It's going to take some time still. He's succeeding at the college level right now, but moving to the AHL, eventually to the NHL, those are big steps, and it's going to take some time. Bigger bodies take longer to develop, like upwards of 400 NHL games to really reach their breakout threshold for bigger players. Look at Juraj Slafkovsky in Montreal as a bigger forward, taking him some time. Big picture, though, unfortunately, Oscar Jelvik and Will Moore were out with injuries, but the Bruins pipeline dominated the score sheet last night. 2 assists for Hagens, tournament MVP, 2 goals for Gasseau, the game winner, Dean Letourneau with the dagger goal, even Christian Konstantinsky with heavy defensive minutes to limit BU Stars. Big picture, BC jumped to 12th in the MPI. More importantly, they've proven they can handle the bright lights at TD Garden. Gasseau hoisted the trophy at center ice, the same ice he hopes to call home as a pro. Felt like a bit of a changing of the guard. The Eagles are back. The Bruins' future has not looked this bright in quite some time. And coming up, we are going to rank these guys by NHL readiness and discuss when we may see them at the NHL level. If you've ever hired someone and they looked good on paper, but they just weren't the right fit once they got into the actual job, you know how important it is to hit first and right. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. If you're hiring, Indeed is all you need. You can stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites, because Indeed's sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. Instead of struggling to get your job post seen, Indeed sponsored jobs help your listing stand out and reach quality candidates faster. Sponsored jobs boost your post to the people who are the best match for your role, and that makes a real difference. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now. Support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply, but if you're hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. Thank you so much again for making Locked On Boston Bruins your first listen every day. And thank you for helping make Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. If you're listening every day or even regularly, we have a new special club just for you. It's called the Everydayer Club, and you get access to an ad-free audio feed for Locked On Bruins, which is compatible in Apple, Spotify, Pocket Casts is what I use, every other major podcast app. You'll also get an invite to the members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server, which includes a group chat just for listeners of this show. I'm hanging out in there. We're going to have some talk during the Olympics. I like the fantasy channel in there as well. Go to lockedonbruins.supercast.com or tap the link in the show notes to learn more and to sign up today. All right, so Boston Bruins prospects were on full display last night, and we're just going to rank them in terms of pro readiness here. Unfortunately, Will Moore, second-round pick, he was not able to participate because he was injured. Only 18 years old, currently a freshman, elite offensive instincts. But as Coach Brown hinted, he needs to work on his consistency and defensive reads. Taking a long-term project, perhaps, very high reward in the end, and he was a product of the Charlie Coyle trade from the Colorado Avalanche along with Will Zellers. Great work there from Don Sweeney. Oscar Jelvik, he's a senior like Gasseau, currently sidelined by injury. If he can get healthy for the NCAA tournament, he'll likely join Gasseau in the pro ranks this spring, though he will likely start in the AHL to adjust to the physical pace. So those are kind of going bottom to top in terms of NHL readiness. Then we have Dean Letourneau, again the unicorn, breakout sophomore year, but the Bruins will likely want him to play at least one more year at BC to fully fill out his frame, refine his skating before jumping to the pros. James Hagens is the highest ceiling talent in the system. Technically a sophomore, his MVP performance though, and newly rounded defensive game suggests he has nothing left to prove in college. He's the Bruins' future number one center. Of course, he would love to take BC to the Frozen Four and end his college career on the winningest of notes. Winning the Beanpot, though, is a great way to cap his college career. Be very, very shocked if he goes back to BC for another season. Really nothing left to prove there, and he should at the very least go pro at the end of this college season. Perhaps join the Bruins for the late season push, maybe into the playoffs as well, or they assign him to Providence where he gets a taste of pro hockey, joins a very good Providence team with a real shot at winning the Calder Cup there in the AHL this season. Gasseau, probably the most ready to go pro. 22-year-old captain. His college career is over this spring. 6'4", do-it-all utility. Expect him to sign an ELC immediately after BC's season ends and report at least to Providence. When it comes to Kostadinsky, don't sleep on the 7th-round defenseman. He doesn't put up big points, but he's a massive stay-at-home body who logged heavy minutes in the Beanpot final to shut down BU's Stars, and Cole Eiserman was the lone guy who got on the board. Not the lone guy, but the most notable guy. Every championship team needs that boring defenseman who just clears the porch. That's exactly what he projects to be for the Bruins, kind of the role Jonathan Aspero is filling at the NHL level right now. The Beanpot is going back to Chestnut Hill, but the real winners might be the Bruins front office. They've successfully rebuilt one of the league's thinnest prospect pools by rating the neighborhood's best talent. And the pipeline is officially open for business. Before we wrap up this part of the podcast, though, worth noting that while we love to rank these guys, we love to get excited about prospects, prospect development is not a straight line. You look at the locker room like BC's and you see why NHL readiness is such a moving target, right? There are three big factors that dictate when these Eagles will finally land in Boston, if at all. There's no guarantees here with any of these guys, save for Hagens. You have Gasseau at 22, fully grown into his 6'4" man body. Spent 4 years in the college weight room. You have Dean Letourneau, who's 6'7", but still navigating that kind of Bambi stage of a growth spurt that's culminating in one of the biggest players who will play in the NHL. For a guy that size, the timeline is often longer because the coordination, the speed of the game, it all has to catch up to his height. So, yeah, expect still a couple of years at least for Letourneau to sniff the NHL, and even sometime once he reaches that level to really develop. We could be talking like a handful of years here. In hockey, we often see players born in the first half of the year, like James Hagens, get more ice time and elite coaching early on. This creates a compounding advantage. They've played more high-stakes minutes by age 18 than a late bloomer might have had by age 21. That game sense is the hardest thing to teach, and Hagens has it in spades. So there's the physical maturity gap, the what's called the Matthew effect, players born earlier in the year, and also your position and your role. It's almost always faster for a winger to jump to the pros than a center or a defenseman. And as Coach Brown from BC mentioned, Hagens is being asked to round out his game, learning the defensive details that a number one NHL center needs. This extra year at BC isn't because he lacks skill. It's because the Bruins want him to arrive as a complete 200-foot player, not just a highlight reel. Don't panic if Letourneau doesn't sign the second the season ends. Don't panic if James Hagens signs but is sent to Providence. Whether it's over-ripening in the NCAA, getting that cup of coffee or two in Providence, the Bruins are playing the long game here with this BC core. And after last night's Beanpot performance, that long game looks pretty bright. So congrats to BC, and really looking forward to seeing where these guys end up, how they continue to develop, and where they go from this win at the Beanpot through the rest of the NCAA season. The Boston Bruins, of course, are on a break, getting ready for the Olympics to begin over in Milan. Well, the Olympics have begun. We're talking about the men's Olympic hockey tournament specifically. We'll take a look at what's going on over there with a little Olympic update here as the podcast continues. Cold days, packed schedules, and big goals, that's winter for you. And when there's not a lot of time to cook, eating well can feel like another thing on the to-do list. And that's where Factor comes in. Factor makes healthy eating easy with fully prepared meals designed by dietitians and crafted by chefs. So you can eat well without the planning, prepping, or cooking. There's options like high protein, calorie smart, Mediterranean diet. I got a bunch of gluten-free meals sent prior to the holidays, and they were just unbelievably delicious, perfect for busy weeks when you still want meals that support your goals without stress. Just head to factormeals.com/LockedOnNHL50 off and use code LockedOnNHL50 off to get 50% off and free breakfast for a year. You can eat like a pro with Factor. Tons of variety with 100 rotating meals each week, so it never gets boring. New subscribers only. It varies by plan. One free breakfast item per box for 1 year while the subscription is active. But head to factormeals.com/LockedOnNHL50 off and use code LockedOnNHL50 off to get 50% off and free breakfast for 1 year. All right, we are gearing up for the men's Olympic hockey tournament, which will begin on Thursday over in Milan. We're going to end today's podcast with a quick update as to how the Bruins are doing over there. The entirety of the Bruins Olympic contingent has arrived in the last 72 hours, 48 I should say. They've taken up their various roles representing their countries. They found their modest accommodations. Some guys sharing rooms like Hampus Lindholm, Rickard Rakell for Sweden. Charlie McAvoy somehow got his own room, but they're pretty tiny, reminiscent of, probably worse than what you see from BC's dorm rooms, right? Charlie McAvoy, David Pastrnak, as talked about yesterday, were named as alternate captains for the United States and Czechia, respectively. They started their practices. McAvoy lined up with Quinn Hughes as America's top defensive pair, a pair that is probably the best of any country in the tournament, to be honest. In net, Jeremy Swayman split the backup role with Jake Ottinger. Connor Hellebuck expected to be the starter for Team USA. For Team Czechia, Pastrnak is, of course, on their top line, playing with Thomas Hertl and Martin Necas, which is a very formidable top line. Any country would be lucky to have any of those guys on their top line. Unfortunately, of course, Pavel Zacha was ruled out of the Olympics with an injury. They also have former Bruin Ondrej Kase sitting on line 2 for Czechia, so that'll be a guy to keep an eye on. Really, wish he had been able to have a better career over in the NHL, cut short due to head injuries. In Sweden, the Bruins have both Elias and Hampus Lindholm. Doesn't seem like we have much in terms of concrete lines. Elias, if healthy, will probably play in the top 6, maybe in a third line role. Hampus will begin as possibly Sweden's 7th defenseman after being added to the roster late. Interesting to see where Elias fits because of that injury that he was dealing with prior to the break. And hopefully he's able to go. I haven't seen any word on him really either way so far over at Milan. We also have the Finns. The Bruins have Henri Jokiharju, Joonas Korpisalo. Jokiharju's on the second pair alongside Olli Mata. Korpisalo will be the team's third stringer behind Jussi Saros and Kevin Lankinen. So both goalies kind of in supporting roles here, maybe the third option for each of their respective countries. David Pastrnak, Charlie McAvoy will be heavily featured for their countries. Waiting to see where the Lindholms fit into the grand scheme of things, while Jokiharju will be on the second pair. What we also don't really know is Bruins prospect Dans Locmelis. He will likely play a key role for his Latvian squad. We saw at the World Championships, Locmelis was, given some real props by Sidney Crosby back in May. Sidney Crosby had some very complimentary things to say about the Boston Bruins prospect. He created a lot of excitement at the World Championships. And while representing Latvia, Canadian national team captain Sidney Crosby approached Locmelis after the World Championship game against Latvia, tapped him on the shoulder, and praised his performance on the ice. Dance was reportedly confused, didn't really know how to respond. Understandable that he would have been taken aback by that. A guy like Crosby taking some time to compliment a relative unknown is clearly a real compliment and shows that Locmelis is doing something right. He had, at that point, 3 goals and 1 assist through 3 games at the World Championships to that point, and he had been tied in the tournament in goals scored with the likes of Mika Zibanejad, Cutter Gauthier. So look for Latvia to perhaps make a bit of noise here with a guy like Locmelis locking down a key role for that team. Speaking of Latvia, of course, the first game for them will be against Team USA, Sandis Velmanis versus Charlie McAvoy. That will certainly be interesting to watch. In terms of the men's Olympic hockey schedule, it all gets going on Thursday. Czechia versus Canada in the morning. Latvia, USA in the afternoon. Actually, there's a couple games tomorrow. Slovakia, Finland, Sweden versus Italy. And then we will have Czechia, Canada, Latvia, USA on Thursday. We are going to be all over this tournament here on Locked On Boston Bruins. Tomorrow, maybe we'll do some predictions and take a look ahead at this tournament, bring you all the latest on the black and gold from Italy and at home. Thank you so much for making Locked On Boston Bruins part of your daily routine. Please do subscribe on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube if you have not done so already, so you get all the latest episodes. You can get bonus content on Instagram and TikTok as well at Locked NHL Bruins. And if you never miss an episode or you're a regular listener, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Bruins ad-free, plus members-only Discord access and more. Head to lockedonbruins.supercast.com to join the club. Check out the Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel next, which is going 24/7. We've got the NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL, bringing you all the latest from around the NHL. We've got some squad shows teeing up the Olympics, talking about the women's tournament. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. We'll talk to you again here on the next episode of Locked On Boston Bruins, your favorite team every single day.